Good afternoon, everybody. DJ Styles here at Custom Corpses. Okay, I'm making my master molds as we speak. I just paste waxed the inside of the mold. This is the H40. Custom Corpses Custom Corpses NightCreeper 40. And I already did the kills. Custom Corpses NightCreeper kills. And see, that is urethane, and that's what I'm preparing the mold to do. All right, let's talk about molds for a second. Especially, I mean, I'm not going to reiterate what I've already done on video on how to do urethane molds, because I did a step-by-step video on the process of making the urethane mold. If you look at my YouTube channel, look it up, you'll see it. There's plenty of content there, and you will learn every step of the way. Anyway, let's talk about molds. A lot of people make the mistake of making their... All right, first of all, what does a mold do? All right, a mold, basically, when you pour the latex into the mold, you pour the latex into the mold, and the mold absorbs the moisture out of the latex. All right. So what happens to a sponge if you pull the moisture, or if you soak the sponge up completely full? Well, the sponge doesn't take any more water. All right. And that's exactly what your mold is too. So that's why it's very important to make sure your molds are thick. You don't want it no less than 1.5 inches. I like to keep them around 2 inches thick. That's a heavy mold. You see this? This is like 2 inches thick, this mold. But that's because when it pulls that moisture out of there, you never have to worry about it, oversaturating. That's basically what that's called. When your mold oversaturates, it won't pull any more moisture out, and it affects the thickness of your mask. It affects whether or not the latex even cures. So, and some people have major problems because what will happen is if your mold doesn't actually absorb the moisture completely out of the latex due to the fact that you have your mold poured too thin, or you made your mold too thin, what will happen is when you go to pull that mask out, it'll be still sticky and messy, and it'll tear real easy. So that's basically what the problem is with a lot of the people that make the molds too thin. So that's the reason why. Think of your mold as a big sponge, and that's what your mold does. It absorbs moisture. All right, and it works from the wall. Let me do this right. It works from the outer wall. It dries the latex from the surface of the mold inward. But right now, what I'm trying to do, and this is the reason why you have to do this when you're making urethane, is because, first of all, urethane will stick to stone, and you will not get it off. All right. But the most important part I have to do is make sure that the urethane doesn't grab into the stone. And that's why you put a paste wax on this, because one, it stops the moisture absorption ability of the mold, and two, it acts as a release agent. Now, I've put a coat of paste wax on here. I'm gonna let that dry for like 2 hours. And then what I'm going to do is put another release agent. All right, it's called Polies 2650. It's a sealer and release agent. So what that does is that'll actually add, just in case the paste wax didn't hit a spot perfectly and there's still absorption there, this stuff is very oily, and you put that on the inside of that, and that absolutely takes care of the rest. And then you let that sit for like a half hour, absorbing into any of the areas that may still be trying to absorb moisture. Does that make sense? And then once that's done, just for the extra, you don't have to do this. But I'll take some Polies 2300 release agent, and I'll spray the inside of it just for that added extra protection, because you definitely don't want your urethane master sticking to the walls. One, urethane costs a small fortune. All right, the rubber is not cheap. This urethane rubber is not cheap. And you don't want to make a mistake. So, and being lazy, so to speak, by not taking those extra precautions can actually cost you a small fortune. So do yourself a favor and do it the right way, and you will have success. You will definitely have success. Besides, you know, most people, you spend 8, 9, 10 months, sometimes a year, sculpting your sculpture, and the last thing you want to do is screw up in your final steps of making your mold, because that can really be, I know this visually is confusing to you, because this is the inside of the mold. It actually looks like it's coming out at you, but it's not. It's the inside. It's inverted. So it's really cool. I mean, I love this business. I really do. I've got a really deep passion for it now, and I'm never going to stop. I'm going to start creating original stuff right after I do the Michael Myers series, and I get that completed. I'll be happy, very happy. And that's where I'm at with this. Yes, definitely. So I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. In case I don't get to say it a little later on, I'm really busy trying to get these molds done, these master molds, and then I'm going to make 2 new molds from the master copies. So I never, oh, that's another thing, the master copies. These master copies, when you put this in the mold, it doesn't shrink. All right, this type of rubber does not shrink. So whatever your original sculpture size is, which this is the sculpture right here, this came from the sculpture, this particular mold. This is the master mold right here. This came from the sculpture, and that will maintain its original size. So what I end up doing is this will be the large mask, because when this is casted after I make another mold from the master, you know, I'll make another mold, a 1-piece mold, so I don't have the dividing walls. I'll make a 1-piece mold out of the master. All right, and then what I'll do is I'll pour a latex mask into the new mold, and that'll shrink 2 inches, so it'll be the large mask. This will be the large mask when the master's done. And then from there, you know, you have a large version, and all you do from that point is if you put another latex mask and foam fill it, which I already did that step, because I do that before I do the master. I'll make a latex and then foam fill it in the master, and then let that shrink down to 2 inches. And that will give me a 2-inch version, a 2-inch smaller version, because, you know, it's 2 inches smaller there. And then when you put a cast and you put more latex in it, it's another 2 inches. So it shrinks it down to a perfect small version of the mask, and you don't lose any details. Absolutely amazing process. It's fun. It's time consuming. And your mold process is the most important part and scariest part of all the sculpturing. I find it amazing. Like, you know, people are like, oh, I'm afraid. Well, yeah, it's an intense situation where you make a mistake with your mold, you're done. You know, you got to start over again. And that means starting your sculpture all over again. In my case, I learned from a couple of pros in the business, just by seeing and it's not that they told me this, but seeing their process of mold making using wet clay. And wet clay is a water-based clay, and it's a very soft clay. All right. I like a very hard clay. I use a monster clay. I use a wax-based clay. It's very hard. You sculpt, and then why I like it so much is because when I demold my sculpture, I get very little damage to it. I maintain the shape of the head, which is the most important part, because that's the hardest part to get straight, is the shape. Once you get the shape completed, and the small details will get messed up, like in the eye cuts and stuff like that, that'll get messed up when you demold on your sculpture. But it's a quick fix. It's simple to fix. Wet clay, on the other hand, when you demold wet clay, you're doing it with a power washer. You know what I mean? That mold's done. The wet clay, why I don't like it is because once you sculpture it, you sculpt something, and once you mold it, it's over. You lose the shape, you lose everything, you lose it all on the sculpture. So I like this process a lot better. It's allowed me to do literally, I'm working on my 4th version of my original mold so far. So I've got 3 master molds. I have the 1978. I have the H40, which is this one here. I have the Kills right there. That's done. And right now on the sculpture's back on my bench, and I'm re-sculpting it to make the 1981. I was going to do the H40. I was going to do the H40 and do a perfect representation or replica of the mask, but bigger. But you know what? I thought about it and I said, it's done. People are able to buy that mask. It's different if they weren't able to buy it. Then, yeah, sure, that's what you want to do. You want to make that replica. But because of the fact that you can buy that mask, you can buy the H40 from Tots, and it's from the mold, and it's, it's a cheaper mask. Yes, it's not a real nice high quality mask that you're going to get from a independent mask maker. Trust me, independent mask makers make 10 times better, thickness. I have a very thick pour on my mask. I usually use a thick latex. The artwork is all hand painted. It's not the same, and people wonder why that a mask, I can't charge, no matter what mask I make, I can't charge any less than $250 for a mask, because you have to recoup sometimes up to a year of work that went into the sculpture. And most times you really, if you think about the time that you put in, and even as you're producing the mask itself, once the mold's done, you're still putting the time with painting the mask and hairing the mask. It's time consuming, and the funny thing is, the original mask, 1978, there's very little work that has to be done to it. You basically have to paint it white, you mud wash it, and then you hair it, and it's pretty much done. You just, you do use, I want to say flesh tones. Yeah, there's some flesh tones. There's paint, there's white, flesh tone, and a mud wash to give it, some, and some dark black. There is some black involved, but there's very few steps to it, and it's not very hard to do. But this H40 and the Kills mask takes it to a whole nother level. There's a lot more stages to it. There's a lot more colors involved. You have to make sure you have the depth right in the paint, especially the Kills mask. The Kills mask is really a paint job. It's a major paint job. So you'll spend, all right, let's, for instance, the 1978, I'll spend probably 2 hours, to finish, a paint job on it, maybe an hour and I would say 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half to do a paint job on the 78. The Kills mask, that's a 4 to 5 hour paint process. All right, maybe 6, depending on what version you want. I sell 3 different paint schemes for this. There's going to be the clean, which is like, there's no, you have all the burnt and everything. You just don't have all the grime, the dirt, the blood. All right, so I'm going to do a clean version of the mask, and then I'm going to do a blood version where at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, there's blood splatter all over the face of the mask. All right, and then there's the poster mask, and that's another level altogether. That's a whole nother. You got to do so much to paint that poster mask, because you're trying to replicate that mask that's on the poster that looks like it's all red and yellow tones. So that's going to be the 3 versions you're going to be able to purchase from me. Is going to be clean, blood, and then poster, or I might call it fire mask. That's what I think I'm going to call it, the fire mask. That's what I'll call it, fire version. So when you order your mask from me, you're basically going to give me the information is basically what size. You're going to tell me what size you're going to measure your head to what size mask you need. And you go right above your eyebrows, right there, right at your eyebrows. You take a fabric tape measure, and you measure from the eyebrows to the furthest point to the back of your head. And you can kind of reach back there and feel that spot where it's at. And you measure that circumference, and that'll tell you what size head you are. And then when you tell me what size head you are, I'm able to just estimate which mask you're going to get. You're either going to get the large or you're going to get the small mask. There's only two sizes. So with that being said, you'll be able to, we'll have a phone conversation, whenever somebody orders something with me. And, do you want darker features? Do you want, do you want any kind of custom? You can customize your paint work a little bit. And I'll go through the process. As I go through a step, I'll say, okay, we're at this point now where I'm going to be darkening the areas. Do you want it lighter? Do you want it darker? And so on and so forth. That's how we'll go about it. Because my masks are expensive. They're going to be probably about $300 to $350. I don't know about the Kills. The Kills poster mask might be a $400 to $500 mask when it's all said and done, because there's a lot more involved. So a lot more paint schemes, a lot more. You just have to do a lot to prepare for that. Anyway, like I said, though, that's going to be a collector's piece. Trust me, that poster mask will be a collector's piece. Now, there's probably people out there already starting to make that mask from the TOTS overhauls. A lot of overhauls going on. I'm actually going to overhaul one that I bought for reference when I was doing the burnt on the Kills mask. So I bought the TOTS mask to use for reference. And it was nice because, you really could see everything in a 3D. So basically, this is it. This is the tutorial basically on how to make your molds and, the thickness of your molds. I know I rattled on about a bunch of other stuff, but that's okay. It's all about teaching you guys, and I hope you learned something from this. You guys are attempting these molds. Make sure your molds are nice and thick. Do not underestimate, or try to conserve your Ultra Cal 30. That's what this is. I use an Ultra Cal 30. It's a very hard plaster. And there's different ultracal. I mean, you have ultracal and then you got hydrocal. Now let me tell you what the difference is. Hydrocal's softer, all right? Also, hydrocal does not like to stick to itself. In other words, if you start molding this thing and you're doing one layer and after, you know, you're going to have to do multiple layers because either you're new to it and you're not real fast, all right? Well, hydrocal won't stick to itself. So, you know, if it cures up and it gets hard, your first layer, you try to put another layer of hydrocal on top of that to thicken the mold, it won't stick to itself. That's why ultracal is the best, because even once it's cured, you can add more ultracal to it to thicken the mold. So I would steer clear of hydrocal unless you're really accomplished and have been doing this for a long time. If you're new to this business and you're not real fast at the mold making process, like myself, stick with ultracal 30. Ultracal 30. It's definitely the best for mold making. One, ultracal's a lot harder than all the other ones. Now, I know a lot of guys they're in the business that can sculpt out a mask in wet clay in a couple hours. They'll sculpt the mask out and then they'll use hydrocal, because they'll make the mold real fast too, and it'll be one application. They'll make the mold all in one shot. That's what you have to do with hydrocal. It has to be all done in one application. In other words, this thickness here isn't built up. It's all done in one application. And I don't have that experience, and I'm not fast enough to do that. I take the extra precaution and I use the ultracal 30 because you can layer it. All right, and I also add a fabric to it. I use burlap. I use burlap inside I put the first coat I put on my mold is a very thin coat, and it just grabs all the detail. You want to make sure all the detail's in there, and then the next coat you thicken it up some. All right, and you got it nice and thick. You're probably about halfway through this. All right, then your last coat, you're putting burlap over top of this, and it's all inside this. You know, it's on top of your mold, and then you're putting smoothing it out and making sure that the fabric's covered well. So, yeah, I got all that on video too, so you can see that process. I got tons of videos out there. I got tons of videos on my channel, so if you like the content, hit the subscribe and the notification bell, and please share the content. Thank you so much. Have a great, what's today? Wednesday. Yeah, it's hump day. Hey, have a great weekend. It's coming, but a lot of you guys can't wait. Okay, so peace, love. See you guys.